Hello, my friends out there in TV land. It's Maryann Goulart here, your host for Out and About, the show that tells you what's happening in and around Fall River in arts and entertainment and just cultural events that you can attend and to take your children to. That's a little hint about where we're going with today's episode. But first, I want to think about a little bit of my childhood, as I like to do generally, and think of a museum trip that went awry. Now, back when I was younger at the Brayton Avenue School, I'm sure some of you went to the Brayton Avenue School out there in Fall River, we used to go from our school to the William S. Green School on foot, a few of us, to a special science class. And that was run and organized by Mr. Cahill. Well, one day he thought it would be wonderful if he would organize a trip to the Boston Science Museum. So my dad, hardworking dad, decided to take the day off from work, and we made our lunches in the morning. We were all set to go, got on the bus, all of us, the whole 6th grade, got to Boston, and it was closed. So we never got to get to the Boston Museum that day of science. What we did do, though, they let us loose in Boston Commons, so it ended up being a very fun day. We visited a joke shop, we did all kinds of crazy things, but not so much science. So what I'm here to tell you today is good news. You don't have to take a long ride to Boston if you have children and you want them to visit a museum, because right here in Fall River we have a wonderful new gem of a museum called the Children's Museum of Greater Fall River. Have you been? If not, it's time to go. I have some guests with me today, and I'd like to introduce them to you. I have the Executive Director of the Children's Museum of Greater Fall River. That's Jo-Anne Sbrega here. Hi, Jo-Anne.
Hello,
Welcome.
Maryann. Thank you. Welcome. Thank you for having us.
Oh, you're very welcome. And I have the President of the Board of Directors. This is Melissa Cardelli. Welcome, Melissa.
Thank you. Thank you for having us
I'm
today.
so glad you're here, and I'm so glad for all the work that you do for the kids. Now, please tell us a little bit, the studio audience and the television audience, about how the museum came about. What were the origins of the Greater Fall River Children's Museum?
Well, the Greater Fall River Children's Museum actually goes back to 1999 by our founding executive director, Ray Gordon. Had the idea, dad of 2 young girls, wanted to bring the concept here to Fall River, and began knocking on doors, looking for support, and from there put a board of directors together, and by 2003 had our nonprofit status. Then we went and called ourselves a museum without walls, and I was first on the board of directors and was part of that from 2005, and we went and wrote grants and used many venues in town, including BCC, the Narrows, to fulfill our grants. And from there, of course, you know where we are in this grand old building. In 2012, we took over the former Superior Courthouse and began doing our renovations, and we're proud to say we have the Phase 1 opened, which is the first floor, and we're just celebrating the 1st anniversary of that.
Wow, so this has been a 15-year process?
Absolutely,
basically.
absolutely.
Who are some of the other movers and shakers that got this off the ground in the beginning? Couldn't have just been the 2 of you, right?
No. In fact, you know, I wasn't part of that. Neither of us were part of that in 1999, but certainly, you know, Ray got those first folks together. And I hate to mention names and leave you know somebody out, but we have some board members that in fact are still with us, and one name I have to mention is Artie Anderson. Artie does our books for us and just does a splendid job, and she's been part of that force that helped with, you know, getting the nonprofit status and doing all our business. But you know, many hardworking, many were educators in the beginning, that helped because you needed to, you know, be multi-purpose and do a lot of the events. You know, we didn't have a staff back then, so you had to know how to work with children, you know, and so we had many educators that were part of and still continue to be part of.
So speaking of staff, how does the museum run? Is it run by volunteers? Is it run by paid staff? Does the board have a hand in that? How does the museum run?
Well, for the board of directors, we actually have 20 members on our board. The board of directors' role is more to help with decision making, fundraising, both big and small, looking to get support from donors. We do a lot of subcommittee work, helping with the policies, creating the policies for the museum. And then we're very fortunate to have a staff, a paid staff at the museum, which is always good, of 2 full-time staff, our executive director, and we have an assistant, a part-time person as well as many, many volunteers still that help to make the museum run.
When was your grand opening?
Our grand opening was May of 2013.
So recently,
that's,
and
yes.
that's when your staff came on board?
The staff came on board as of
basically-
March. Yeah, we began opening every weekend, and then actually in March we opened 5 days a week, but a room wasn't open yet. And when the water room, which was our last room in phase 1, opened, then we had our grand opening. And volunteers are on all levels. You know, we're very proud that the cost was able to be kept down so because of volunteers. We had prime painters from 18 to 80 years old that first summer. A couple of wonderful projects with BCC, with creating the dinosaur room was a course. A professor by the name of Eric Durant actually designed a course called Museum Fabrication. Violet's music room, all of the murals in that room were done by volunteers under the direction of Marissa Millard, Professor Marissa Millard. We have a couple we call Mr. and Mrs. Fix-It, and they hang cabinets for us and, you know, help us build exhibits and all. So we couldn't do it without these wonderful folks in the community.
Some of these unsung heroes.
Absolutely.
Who are in every organization.
Absolutely.
And who do the work but don't get any of the
Absolutely,
big credit, but it happens everywhere around.
Absolutely.
It really does. Now, as far as the board of directors, you said they make some of the decisions. Would that be just logistics and operational decisions, or do you make decisions as far as searching for grants and continued funding and such?
So yes, we do make decisions in regards to the grants, searching for funding, getting donors. We also help to design the policies that the museum runs by, so our memberships, what the costs will be, what recipients will get with that membership, as well as other policies around how things are run within the museum. But our programs itself, the executive director, Jo-Anne, takes care of all of our programming for the museum.
I see. So then how often do you meet if you are doing all this work? Really, how often do you meet?
We do meet monthly, and then as needed. So a lot of our committees meet quite frequently, so that way we can pursue grants and other sources of funding for the museum.
Now, what are some of the activities that you offer at the museum? I know you have your special rooms, so if you could maybe, if someone were walking through the door for the first time, what kinds of activities would be available? And this is my favorite part of a show, because this is a show and tell part. And I have a funny little teaching show and tell story to add, which has to, you know, I don't want to discourage you from your show and tell, however, we were doing a science show and tell, and it was when I taught at the Doran Annex School. And back then, animals were still allowed to come into the classrooms, which was probably not such a good idea, because one time, in addition to my show and tell, my classroom rabbit set off all of the burglar alarms in the building one night. It escaped, trying to get to the 4th grade rabbit, which was a whole other story. But anyway, we were having a show and tell, and children had brought in their pets. So one child brought in his snake. Now, I wasn't, you know, very afraid of snakes. I didn't until that moment, but I picked up the snake, and the snake turned its lovely head and bit me right here. So of course, being the good 2nd grade, I taught 2nd grade at that time, the good 2nd grade teacher that I was, thinking of the safety of the students, what did I do? I threw the snake, of course, because it was biting me, so I threw it. Every child got up on the desk, the snake is slithering around. The child who owned the snake was going a little bonkers bonkers because thought his snake, his lovely pet, was going to be injured. But we did end up capturing the snake again, and that was my funniest show and tell of my whole teaching career, that thing. So you brought some things to show and
that's
tell.
hard to beat.
So, yeah, I know. But there's nothing live in this box, right?
No.
Okay, very good. So what have you brought?
So we did bring a few show and tells, and a couple of them, well, they're all specific, but anyway, but this, we're very proud, as I mentioned, about Violet's music.
Yes.
We obtained the copyright from the author and illustrator and brought this book to life. So Angela Johnson, the author, had actually visited Fall River. And
Is she local?
No, she's from Ohio. And the year that we chose for a grant to feature Violet's music, Angela was also chosen by the Fall River Public Schools for literacy pre-K to 2. So we wrote a grant and we brought Angela here, and she did teaching a workshop for teachers, and we brought her here on campus to the Boyd Center for Early Childhood that's here at BCC, and every child in the class received an autographed book as part of the grant, and we brought Angela to read to the children, and that was great. The weekend before, we had been at the Narrows doing their fall festival, and we hired a paper artist. Lisa came and actually made the statue of Violet. And so here, Angela signed it for us. So that's displayed there. So what we did is we brought this book to life, and the book, Violet's Music, is about a little girl who loves music from the day she's born, and she goes out looking for music in her world. And I'm just turning to a few pages that if you visit the museum, you're going to see particularly this picture. You would see this for one.
Let me hold it up a little higher because I don't think we're catching everything.
Okay. That's an example of one of the pictures you will see brought to life on the walls. The illustrator had asked that the students didn't have to repeat the book, but they did have to keep with her style. And so you'll see that on the walls, that some of the pictures aren't exactly what you'd see in the book, but it keeps to her style. And that was what Laura had asked of us. So a class from BCC, under the direction of Marissa Millard, on a volunteer basis, came in. They first submitted their drawings to us. We chose the drawings that we wanted, and then as volunteers that summer, they came in and did the illustrations on the wall. So we're very proud of that. So the room contains lots of different kinds of music. It also tells the story. But it's a city story, so they're in the park, so there's a little fruit stand, there is a house in there. And we brought an example of one instrument that actually Melissa can tell us that she built with her children.
Oh, can you play it too?
I can.
Oh, good, we love that.
So this instrument, part of Violet's music as well, is that she finds everyday items to use to make music.
Yes.
And so with my children at the time, they were just a little bit younger than they are now, so about 8 and 11. We made this instrument just by getting some things that we had found around the house. And we put it together. I even had my nephew who was in high school at the time. I was like, I need something to, make this a little bit sturdier for children to use. And so he built the wooden frame around for us. But basically, you just hold it up.
Oh, that's fabulous. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, and so depending on how fast you move it.
What do you call it?
I don't even have a name for it. I don't think I didn't name it.
It's the spin-arounder, spin-it-arounder or something.
But the children actually colored all of the washers, so that way when it goes down, it would have they would see different colors as it moved down. And the children really seem to enjoy it. It's given parents ideas of how to make things at home.
Oh my goodness! So, where could they even find directions? Could they find directions to do this if a parent was interested?
Oh, definitely.
Came in. So this is one of the examples of what you have in Violet's room.
Yes.
Can I do it?
Of course.
I'm gonna try. And what a nice project with the class, because they really did design all of them. One more time, sorry. Okay. So could you do it slower as well? Does it work slow? Oh.
Yeah.
Yes, it does.
It does. And that's part of the fun of it, of just exploring and seeing
It reminds
how
me
the
of a
different...
rain stick a little bit, but
Yes,
and I'm
similar to
sure
that.
that do they end up counting them as well?
Yep.
Maybe some of the children.
Absolutely.
I mean, I can just
Yes,
imagine
yeah.
spinning them, all the fun things. This is great.
And
Absolutely.
they even my children even tried to make patterns on different ones. We have
Yes, I
several of
noticed
those.
some of them looked like flowers, and there were some stripes and rainbows. And it's great.
Yeah, yeah.
Really? Did you think of this, or
I got the idea offline, but it was a little bit dangerous. It had a hook that it was used outside, and it was just hanging. And so I was like, well, that's not very safe. So let's try to make this.
so you've really designed this as a?
So we
I
added
think
to
you
it.
need to give it a name.
I have to think of one.
Right now, it's the nice aqua thing that makes noise. Oh, wonderful. And the snake is in this box, correct?
So that is the first room that you'd see as you enter the museum would be Violet's music room, and that's one of our signature rooms. As I say, there are 8 rooms from one we call everything about colors and circles, and we have another room we call the education station, where actually Fall River Public Schools houses their play and learn once a week in there. So
Who do they bring in?
children that are preschool age that come that do not get into by the lottery system to the Fall River Public School preschool. So they can come to these programs that are housed in some of the schools, and the library has one as well.
On a weekly basis?
On a weekly basis, and so it's under the direction of the Early Childhood Department. They ask, we supply the space. But we've also taken it a step further, and we don't charge them to come into the facility that day, and they can stay afterwards. So instead of just an hour-and-a-half program, it's an all-day program if they wish.
Oh, so they would come in with their parent, not
Yes.
with a group
Right.
of...
No, they come in with their parents.
Other
There was
children.
parenting in the program as well, so there were some parenting skills in it as well. And we're actually, it's a program, it's a pilot program, so we're helping parents, families that are underserved, to be able to obtain a membership. So we ask them to donate $2 a week, and we put it towards their membership.
Isn't that nice?
And they'll be able to, it's a 40-week program, so at the end of the 40 weeks, they'll have a membership for the year. So we're very proud of that.
How long has that been going on?
Since September. Yeah, and we also have a Lego room, which is very popular, a construction room, and then probably one of the most popular are the two at the end with the water and dinosaur. And the dinosaur wall, it has a climbing wall, it has a pit. They can be paleontologists and climb in the pit and go in the tunnel. So that is very, very popular. Another very popular area is our multi-purpose room for birthday parties. We're very popular for birthday parties. Book soon if you want a birthday party. They're very, very popular. Field trips, and then folks can also have lunch in there during the week. So we don't have a cafeteria yet, but they can come in and bring a box lunch in. And so many, like today, any day you come in during the week, Wednesday through Friday, you may see families catching on now and bringing lunch boxes or running out for a bagged lunch. So it's very nice.
Now, do you have any other community collaborations in addition to the school department?
We do. We are doing a library pass program with our Fall River Public Library. We work with the Boys and Girls Club. We have a very close relationship with the Boston Children's Museum. Boston was able to get some of the Race to the Top money, and so they're sharing it in programming with the libraries and museums in Massachusetts, and we're very grateful for that. And so what's in this box actually is related to that, is we did some teacher training. Fall River was chosen as one of the 5 from throughout the state to be one of the trainers. So our job, after our staff went to Boston for the STEM training, we came back and trained 100 early childhood educators was our task. We actually trained 140 was what happened. And then National Grid purchased these kits, and each center, or it was centers, public, private, parochial, we chose 0 to 5 years old. So they receive these kits. And each kit would be for a classroom with 25 children or more. And they're very, very practical kinds of things. These are called sound bottles.
Wow.
And when we actually did the workshop,
May I?
yes, we had what we called a sound buffet.
Did they need to guess what it was?
And they had to, well, they could choose from all these different items that were on the sound buffet, and they could fill their boxes with whatever sounds that they wanted to make.
I see. So for a rhythm and
Yep, yep.
I didn't know if it was for identifying. Because
Yeah, it's more for the sound and rhythm.
what do you think's in here, TV audience? Paper clips, so something very easy that you could even make at home, actually.
Absolutely, absolutely.
You could have a nice little rhythm section with your children at home by filling old bottles, and you could do some salsa dancing and have a grand old time. What else?
Absolutely. And scent bottles. We had different kinds of
Yep.
scents out, and just as simple as using just cotton swabs to put your extracts and different things. This one doesn't have one in there, but
I'll pretend.
you can pretend when
Vanilla.
Vanilla! But that's what you could use, or
you
peppermint,
could.
or
Absolutely.
anything
yeah,
like
yeah,
that.
Yeah, and they, they can actually, you don't have to open them. You can, do it this way.
Smart.
So,
Yep.
great.
So that's another thing
Yeah.
that parents could make at
So
home
the-
as well. They could do this.
With the 5 senses, a lot of it.
Right. They also gave handouts or kind of cards to inform families, staff, about what the children would be learning through these different experiences that they would be having. So there'd be some connection to concepts that they would be learning in preschool.
Sure. Oh,
Yeah, they
wonderful.
received a PowerPoint, with it they had, and, so things, magnifying glasses and magnets. So
such
those,
fun. Oh, you knew just by touching and listening which one was
I did. So, you got your, So, so lots of fun, practical things, and so all the teachers
in a
got
classroom
to-
of 25 would
Yes,
get,
yeah.
would get this
Yeah, they
to
would.
use. Oh, there are all sorts of wonderful things. What's
Yeah,
the tube for?
Yeah, just whatever you wish it to be. So it could
I'm
be
sure
a
some-
kaleidoscope
Yep,
or
sure. I'm sure some
just
children
different-
would do a pirate thing.
Absolutely,
Looking
absolutely.
out, and great always to have these in the
Yes.
classroom as well. It's funny, whenever I'd have my science centers out or whatever, I'd have kids sitting there like just looking at their fingerprints or whatever, the texture of the desk, whatever.
Absolutely.
Just so much
Absolutely.
fun.
So, some things that
Flashlights.
just with budget cuts and all, one preschool teacher said, "Oh, these are on my wish list." And she had been waiting for months for color wheels and magnifying glasses, and that made her day. That
Now, what are you using the
it
color
was
wheels
something
for?
on
With the flashlights?
all kinds of, yes, you can. Another way was a little book that was given with it. And where did it go?
Sorry, I have to play with all
Oh,
of
yes.
this. It's
The
wonderful.
mouse paint book.
Okay, yes.
We used that. So one of the ways you can use the color wheels is to see, what colors, if they're mixed together, make another color.
Change.
And so in the
fascinating.
mouse paint book is how we illustrated that. And so we'd say, if you put the red and the yellow together, what would that make? And so it's another way, a fun, old-fashioned way. So anyway, so if we take,
Go ahead.
they climbed right in, and the one was the red and with the yellow, and then if you put the red and yellow together, what would that make? If you put the blue and red together, what would that make? And so it's a way just to show them by illustrating, with the book. So what we did is we actually had teachers stand up. Somebody read the book, and the teachers, somebody was the yellow mouse, somebody was the red mouse, and then they'd put the two colors together and see, and the class would say, "What do we have?" Purple.
Well, this is just terrific. My goodness. So what?
So lots
I'm sure
of
the teachers
practical. Oh, they did.
were
They
delighted,
really have
to get
been. We've
this.
gotten a lot of positive
And
feedback
this was through the Science Museum, but through a grant as
through
well?
the Boston Children's Museum.
Boston
Children's Museum, yeah. So Race to the Top, the federal dollars came to the Boston Children's Museum, and they, in their generosity, were willing to share it, throughout the state. So, providing training first for us, and then they did it regionally. So we were chosen for the South Coast to be the trainers here. And so we're very grateful.
So some of our tax dollars at work.
Absolutely.
In a wonderful
Absolutely.
way.
And yes, and National Grid was a grand sponsor. We're finding that a lot of businesses today, for those of us, I've been in early childhood education for over 40 years, and we always knew how important those first years of life were. But now we actually have scientific evidence that the first 5 years of the brain development, we call it brain building. So now there are a lot of major corporations that are catching on to this, and Melissa and I are fortunate enough to have been nationwide to some conferences for children's museums, and big CEOs are sitting around a table now, and they're taking charge, and they're looking at the workforce development for 2030, and they're saying, this is why we're developing, and this is why STEM, for those of you that may not be familiar with it, science, technology, engineering, and math. And so we're looking, on some basic ways. So our charge, I think sometimes early childhood educators were getting a little intimidated by it and thinking science, technology, engineering, and math. But it's things we've been doing for years. It's just, re-imaging. And so I think this took away some of the scariness for them, and seeing, you've been doing this. Maybe we just need to ask the questions differently. Sure. But it's things we've been doing, for instance, sinking and floating, those kinds of things. But maybe we can ask questions in a different way. Sure. And so it was very affirming for them.
All the sand and water tables in the kindergartens now that are almost laying idle because there's so much other business that's happening.
Absolutely.
No more the child's garden, kindergarten.
No.
Lots of work to do.
Absolutely.
Now, on a typical day, if someone were to walk into the museum, what would be happening? Would there be special events? Would there be lots of children visiting? What are your age brackets do you have coming in generally? Is it mostly the preschoolers?
Well, it's the age, we say 2 to 10 is where the emphasis is primarily, with some overlap. I spoke with a woman this morning and saying it depends on the child. We have high school kids, and I love to see sometimes the demeanor. You see a kid come in with a little attitude, like, I'm too old for this. And then they kind of let themselves go a little bit.
They start to play.
And there's something for everyone, really. But primarily that's where the emphasis is. We put a monthly calendar out. It's available on our web. Lots of Facebook postings as well. So we have weekly themes, and usually an art activity or something in science in addition on our weekly theme. So right now we've got caterpillars that will be monarch butterflies going on. We're planting seeds, and this week we were germinating seeds and letting children take those home. So there's an added addition. We have a laughing yoga program that bi-weekly we have an instructor that Joni Woodward comes in and does laughing yoga with the children on every other Friday.
So there's always something happening.
Absolutely.
So for those of you who have never been to the Children's Museum of Greater Fall River, please get out there, because part of our charge as adults is to teach our children well. So there's some information online. You can find out the website. Do you have a Facebook page as well?
We do.
For pricing and such. And so folks, get out there. Until the next time, cheers.